going on, guys? Sam Adams here, and I'm going to be giving you an overview of pretty much everything that EA talked about at their EA Play event for E3 2016, and I'm going to be kind of talking about what I thought about each of these little things. It's not going to take long, but just so you guys don't have to go back and watch the giant VOD on Twitch, I thought it would be a pretty good video just to kind of break down what was discussed. Now, the entire event lasted for about an hour, so it wasn't that in-depth. However, it was pretty dense. There was a lot of ground that was covered. There were a lot of games that were talked about, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first game that was talked about was Titanfall 2, and a couple of the notes that I have on my notepad are that there is a new grappling hook that kind of also functions as a Tarzan rope, as my Twitch chat did kind of mention, but it is a new way to kind of traverse the map, and it gets you around the map in a faster manner, which is something that is definitely welcome in the world of Titanfall, where the gameplay is so fast-paced. Now, on top of that, there is a deeper customization system as well as a deeper unlock system for leveling up and unlocking new equipment that you can use within the game. However, one of the major changes is that there is going to be a full-fledged single-player offline campaign that you don't have to have any kind of internet connection to actually take part in, which was one of the major complaints that a lot of the original Titanfall players did have with the game, and it seems like they're going to try and kind of make an emotional connection or an emotional bond out of this single-player campaign, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can actually pull that off. Personally, do I think Titanfall 2 is the kind of game that should have a lot of emotion in it, that should have a emotionally impacting kind of storyline? No, I think they should kind of leave that for a different style of game that EA could definitely make, but it is nice to see that Titanfall, the franchise as a whole, is leaping into the world of single-player narrative-driven campaigns, and they were going to have to do it at some point if they wanted the franchise to become a staple in the gaming industry, like it does appear that they are wanting it to, so it's nice to see they're at least kind of getting the ball rolling with that. So next up, they did show off some Madden news, and they talked about the new Madden game a little bit, but it's really nothing that you need to write home about or really pay that much attention to. It's pretty much what you would expect from Madden at this point. However, during that little time period in the press conference, they did mention that they're bringing some new kinds of events into some of their most popular franchises, including Battlefield 1, which is what caught a lot of people's attention. And so these are pretty much community events. So the first kind of event is a challenger event that pretty much allows any size group to create a competitive event within a certain game. So if you had a friend group of, I would say, between 10 and 20 people that wanted to see who was doing the best in Battlefield 1, you could create an event and keep track of that using a tool that EA is going to bring into their games lineup, whether it be FIFA, Madden, Battlefield, whatever it may be, you can do it in that game. Now, for larger scale events that are hosted with partners of EA, there are Premier Series events, which I can imagine, or I assume, is going to be some kind of thing where EA partners with GameStop, and then they can have that kind of event, or EA partners with a Rooster Teeth community or a kind of funny community, maybe a YouTube creators thing, some Redditor stuff. EA partners with people and they have this same kind of event take place, maybe on a larger scale, with a couple of bells and whistles, and that's the kind of thing you're going to be seeing from that Premier Series. Now, on top of that, with the so-called highest tier is the EA major events, which are main events that are controlled by EA itself, and this is kind of one of the headlining, Twitch streams that you would watch kind of things that you might not necessarily get involved in a hands-on manner, but it is going to be a form of entertainment for the community. So next up, we have Mass Effect Andromeda, which is a game that a lot of people were looking forward to because it's kind of Mass Effect 4, and it's pretty much taking the game away from the Milky Way galaxy and trying to find a new home for humanity, asking the question, how far will we go? And the game is powered by the Frostbite engine and is coming this fall, and the gameplay itself was gorgeous, and that's coming from someone that's not even that big of a fan of the Mass Effect franchise. So following that was the announcement of EA Play to Give, which is pretty much where EA has partnered with 5 organizations to give back to the world while playing the games that we love, and this is a part of the conference that I feel like they should have focused a little bit more on, because I wanted to know more about Play to Give. And yes, I can give it a quick Google search, yes, I can go on EA's website and probably find out a lot more about it and figure out how I can donate, how I can help, etc. and so forth, but they should have focused a little bit more of that on their press conference, a little bit more on helping those in need rather than on the new games that they had coming out and how they can make a quick buck. But that's pretty much what the conferences are anyway, so I guess I can't really complain much. But following that, you had FIFA 17, which also runs on the Frostbite engine and pretty much brings in all you would expect to see from a new FIFA game, with the addition of a much more emotionally impacting story than I ever anticipated would be included in a FIFA game. So this is called FIFA 17 The Journey, and it's pretty much following the story of somebody that's just getting into the world of soccer and the world of professional soccer at that, and it pretty much follows that player all the way throughout the course of their career. Now this is nothing that's new to any kind of sports franchise. I believe it's called Ultimate Team or Ultimate Player or something along those lines. I've heard of it before. But there's a lot more emotionally impacting story that's kind of incorporated into this side of the game this time around, and that's something that I can't remember seeing in any kind of sports franchise before, so it does seem like they're at least trying to branch out and try some new ideas with FIFA, so it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. That being said, as far as FIFA 17 goes, they spent a lot of time talking about the game, talking about new set pieces and different kinds of ways they're making the game feel more alive, and of course FIFA 17 The Journey they spent a lot of time on. And a lot of people in my chat were complaining that this wasn't what gamers wanted. No one really cared about this. And to some degree, you know, right whenever I was thinking about it, I kind of agreed. You know, not many people are watching this live stream for FIFA news. Everybody was pretty much there for Star Wars or Battlefield. Those were the two that everyone was kind of looking forward to. So to spend this much time on FIFA was kind of not making sense to me. And that's when I realized what kind of players FIFA fans were. I remembered what kind of players these guys were. FIFA fans come back year after year, and they love the game, and so to spend this much time in a so-called, you know, prime time press conference, that shows a lot of dedication to that side of the fan base, and I feel really good that EA actually took the time and the initiative to do that. So following all that FIFA 17 talk was actually EA Originals, which is pretty much where you're taking new experiences that game developers are making that are imaginative and creative and kind of bringing them into the limelight and giving them the funding and the resources that they need to actually make an impact in the industry and make these new franchises known instead of just having this same kind of recycled content year after year like we're seeing with, unfortunately, Battlefield and Call of Duty. Of course, Battlefield 1 is getting away from it, but pretty much EA Originals is just trying to get more new IPs out into the world of gaming, and that to me is a good thing. So alongside of this kind of announcement was a new game announced called Fe, which is pretty much a personal narrative about our relationship with nature and our longing to be one with the world around us, and it reminds us that everything in the world is connected and that connection and balance is constantly under threat. Now this game is something that is definitely driven by art, it's driven by its narrative, and it's definitely a storytelling title, so if you're looking for something that's action-y like Battlefield or Star Wars Battlefront or Mass Effect Andromeda with its storytelling, you're not going to be getting that, but if you did like the world of Unravel that featured a nice little character by the name of Yarny, you're probably going to like Fe, and it's nice to see that EA Originals is putting more effort and putting more, I don't want to say money, but more resources behind getting these new IP out to us to play, and so I feel like that's another way that EA is doing right by the gamers and by the gaming industry as a whole. So next up, they talked about Star Wars for a significant amount of time, and I have to admit, by the end of this little section of the show, I was really excited with where Star Wars was going. So they started things off by saying what you could play that was based around Star Wars right now today, and you had Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, which I believe is a mobile game, Star Wars The Old Republic, and then Star Wars Battlefront, which is of course the reboot that we saw towards the end of last year, all of which are pretty well received by critics, except for the latter of those, which is Star Wars Battlefront, but it seems like they're going to be addressing that because they did announce that a new Battlefront game is coming in 2017, building on what fans already love, and also bringing a new narrative in, which was confirmed a couple of weeks ago in some kind of interview that someone from EA did, but we are getting that new Battlefront game in 2017, so it does appear that this is going to be a bi-yearly franchise. The Battlefront franchise is. Now, following that was the announcement that Visceral and Respawn are both working on two different kinds of Star Wars projects. The more interesting, surprisingly enough, is coming from Visceral, which is featuring a new story and new characters that is simply set in the Star Wars universe, and then Respawn, like I said, is also working on another project. So it seems like the way the EA is dealing with the Star Wars stuff is instead of making a whole bunch of first-person shooters that are centered in the Star Wars universe, they're kind of branching out and trying different kinds of gameplay experiences that might focus on gameplay, that might focus on story, that might focus on gunplay, etc. And they're just trying to kind of branch out and try new things within this universe that everyone pretty much universally loves. And I feel like that's a different kind of way than I would personally go about dealing with this new refound popularity in Star Wars. But it's certainly one way to do it, and I feel like it's probably the best way to do it because it lets everyone choose the kind of experience that they want to have and lets you kind of take it and run with it. So last but not least, they addressed Battlefield 1, and they talked about it pretty extensively, including after the conference they showed off an hour of multiplayer gameplay, which featured a couple of famous people including Snoop Dogg, Jamie Foxx, Zac Efron, etc. playing the game's multiplayer, and it looked to be very impressive. So a couple of the notes that I have for this is that it has community involvement at every step of the way. The destruction is more intuitive and natural than ever before, and it continuously impacts the world around you. And on top of that, there's also dynamic weather, but it's not the kind of dynamic weather that we've seen before. It can happen at any time and is completely and totally unpredictable, which is nice because, like, whenever you were playing Battlefield 4 and the weather was changing, you pretty much knew at what point in the match that was going to happen, and you could kind of shape your experience and your tactics around that. Now, in addition to this, whenever I was watching the live stream, as going back to the destruction side of things, a giant airship finally was destroyed and began to crash. And when this airship crashes, it crashes, and there is no prediction of where this thing can go. It can go on top of the city, it could go on a hillside, but there is going to be a ton of wreckage, a ton of rubble, a ton of steel that you now have to kind of incorporate into your map design, and that certainly changes up the kind of mechanics of the game in a way that Battlefield 4 kind of started, but Battlefield 1 certainly seems to add on to and make an even more in-depth and ingrained experience in the Battlefield universe. So now, as that live stream continued, you saw more multiplayer gameplay, which included vehicles, weapons, etc., pretty much anything you would want to see from a reveal of multiplayer of a new Battlefield game. But I suppose what really blew me away the most is that Battlefield 1 is so different from Battlefield 4 by not only the setting, you know, of course it takes place in World War I and Battlefield 4 is modern day, but also the gameplay and the aesthetics and the feel and the atmosphere. Everything about the game is different than what we currently have, and it's so different that I feel like those two games can survive alongside of each other and thrive for the most part. Obviously, whenever it first debuts, Battlefield 1 is going to have more players, but there are still going to be people and fans of Battlefield 4 that go back to that game, and I can personally see myself switching back and forth between each depending on what kind of mood I am in. It's just nice to see that they're not throwing Battlefield 4 under the bus like Call of Duty does as the new game rolls out year after year. I feel like EA and DICE actually planned to continue support for Battlefield 4 and to continue developing Battlefield 1 and to continue giving love to both communities, and that deserves 2 thumbs up. So the press conference at EA Play 2016 was definitely interesting. I feel like it was definitely fun watching the live stream, and I loved experiencing it with people live in the chat because I got to see their reactions and they got to see mine, and it was a great time. But the game that really blew me away the most, I have to admit, was Titanfall 2 because I wasn't necessarily sure what I could expect from that game. You know, I knew I would see more Titanfall, but I didn't know how much they would variate from that original experience that I got from the first Titanfall, and it seems like they're doing enough experimentation while still retaining a lot of that same experience that I got from the original on the Xbox One. Of course, people are going to say, what about Battlefield 1? What about Star Wars? You know, all that good stuff. With Battlefield 1 and Star Wars, I kind of knew what to expect. I knew they would want to make bank with Star Wars, and I knew that Battlefield 1 was going to look incredible and have some incredible gameplay and get me excited, and I kind of expected that. But with Titanfall 2, really just kind of shocked me with that one, and it in a good way, and I can't wait to play that one when it comes out this fall. That being said, when it comes out, October the 28th is the confirmed release date for Titanfall 2, and that literally comes 1 week after Battlefield 1, which comes out on October the 21st. That's an interesting confliction right there, because that's a lot of awesome games coming out within the course of 2 weeks, and who knows what else is coming out centered around that. I'm sure after E3 we'll have a complete timeline of what games are coming out this fall, but those two games, both being first-person shooters, both coming from EA, both with big titles, you know, I feel like Battlefield is going to kind of trump over Titanfall 2, and that's very unfortunate because I feel like they're both very different experiences with different kinds of gameplay that would not necessarily conflict with one another if people knew that. But do people know that? Probably not. All of that being said, EA Play was great. That's pretty much everything you missed if you missed the live stream, so drop me a like down below, share this video. If you're new to the channel, be sure to head over there and check out some of my other content. I upload new stuff like 3 or 4 days a week, and of course Twitch links and all my social media are in the description box down below, but I'll be covering more of E3 2016 for you guys all week here on my YouTube channel, so click that subscribe button and stay up to date. But as for right now, thank you guys for watching this video. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.